Welcome to CEO IntroNet. I'm your host, Patti Owens. We're here to talk about ESOPs, and let me first say what ESOPs are. Employee stock ownership plans. For some of you who are familiar, you'll know that they could be the greatest thing since sliced bread as a management tool to drive your employees to higher performance. For those of you who are unfamiliar, you're going to get familiar in just a minute. Let's meet our members who will share their stories about why ESOPs have been productive for their companies.
I'm Chuck Pennoni, founder and chairman of Pennoni Associates. We're a consulting engineering firm with about 30 offices from Virginia to Maine. We've had 6 or 7 offices in other countries over the years. We're in our 47th year, and we have about 1,000 employees.
And I'm Cecil Ursprung. I recently retired as CEO of Reflexite Corporation in Avon, Connecticut. We have 16 offices around the world and about 500 employees. We were founded in 1970.
So welcome to both of you. I know you have both been successful as leaders of companies that have gone through an ESOP. And Cecil, let's start with you because you are so passionately committed to the idea of employee ownership that I know you're on the board of the National Center for Employee Ownership.
That's correct.
Tell us why you think ESOPs are an appropriate tool, especially today.
For the same reason that Henry Ford's management style and management techniques were successful for him around the turn of the century. At that time, when the automobile industry was just growing, people were coming to work either off of farms or immigrants who spoke little or no English were coming into the automotive industry. And so the jobs had to be broken down and the assembly line had to be broken down so people could do a simple repetitive job over and over again because they didn't have the training that they needed to do more. There are big engineering departments and then big assembly departments. These days things have totally changed. There are many people in Reflexite who have more education than I do, and I have a bachelor's in economics and finance and a master's in business and some postgraduate work. So I have a good education, but there are people who are smarter and more educated than I am. The question is, how do you tap into that human potential in today's environment? And employee ownership gives you a channel to tap in and tap into that expertise and all that education that so many people have and want to use. People want to use it.
So you're saying that one way to change behavior in your employees is to give them the tools, the alignment with management, and the incentive to really bring their best foot forward. Yes. Chuck, what do you think about that? Did you see changes in your employees' behavior after you decided to proceed with the ESOP?
Absolutely. I agree with Cecil on that, no question about it. But part and parcel to that is something that I observed, which is putting people's mind to rest regarding ownership. When you have a company with founders and the founders are the owner or a small group of people are the owners, particularly in my world, which is consulting engineering, as people get older in the firm and they start talking about transfer of ownership, if they don't have a defined program in place, something like an ESOP, there's anxiety in the firm. In fact, sometimes it gets disruptive and divisive. So putting in an ownership plan like an ESOP very early on where people get to understand it, they don't understand it immediately, it takes a little bit of time, it really changes what's going on in the firm because people become very secure, very comfortable. They know the ownership, they know the program, and they know the future of the firm relative to ownership. And I think that peace of mind is worth an awful lot. I really do.
So that peace of mind is very valuable because it lets people calm down and bring all of their brains to bear when they're at work. So let's do some myth busting. What were some of the preconceived notions or fears that your employees actually anticipated about an ESOP that turned out not to be true?
In our case, when we installed the employee stock ownership plan, we terminated a defined benefit pension plan, which was, secure, defined, people knew what their retirement was going to be for a more open-ended ownership position in the firm. It took us 5 years of diligent, consistent effort to get people to believe in the power of ownership. Finally, we were able to get rid of our floor plan because nobody was ever going to get any benefit from it. The ESOP was so much more valuable than the underlying floor plan. We finally just terminated it, and no one had a problem with it.
But 5 years of good communication
Yes.
and consistent communication made that difference. Chuck, did you have the same kind of experience, or did people rush to adopt the ESOP right out of the gate?
No, exactly the same experience. We did away with a defined benefit retirement program as well, and we put the ESOP in. And I would say 5 years is a good length of time. I agree with that. And you used the key word, communication. You really have to take that extra step to communicate with your employees about what the ESOP is all about and the benefits. And people didn't believe it in the beginning, but once they saw that they truly had ownership, they're getting their ownership reports on a regular basis, they're seeing the value grow, and then some people who retire and then get the benefit and then communicate back to people how good it really is, then the whole attitude begins to change. And now, fortunately, 18 years later, people are excited about that, and they brag about it, that it's an employee-owned firm.
And in fact, I know both of you have received testimonial and thank you letters from your employees who look back and see this as a win-win, a win for you and a win for them. So tell me, what are the good things and the bad things about going down the ESOP road? Because I know you did some research about that.
The good thing about it is what we've been talking about, the ownership, the fact that it puts everyone's mind to rest about the future of the company, the ownership of the company. You have part of that ownership. That's a good thing. The bad thing is in the engineering world, there's been some bad examples where people have failed with the ESOP programs. And there are some companies that when there was a downturn in the economy and the company was on the verge of going out of business and people wanted to cash in their ownership, the money wasn't there to pay them. One of the things that we do is we make sure we make a cash contribution to the program every year in accordance with our actuarial projections to make sure that that'll never happen to us. And word gets around. Benjamin Franklin said there's no secrets in the world unless it's between two people and one's dead. So people know in their own industries the good and the bad. And the bad seems to trump the good so many times. So you have to, using your word, communicate with your employees that you're aware of the bad and that we're not going to fall into that trap that we're providing so that won't happen to us.
So you researched what the risks were and you assured your employees that they were going to be well cared for. If someone asked you what are the top 2 things that you should do when you're walking down the ESOP road, what would you say the pieces of advice are you would offer? What would you say?
Find a way to connect it to things that are important to the employees. In our case, it was through a quality improvement process, and also financially, we began to pay dividends twice a year on people's stock ownership to make that ownership real around vacation time in the summer and around Christmas time in the winter.
Sounds like good advice. And the final word from you, Chuck.
Well, Cecil could have been part of our company because obviously he's so knowledgeable about it, and everything he's saying I agree with 100%. And I think if I had to pick a couple of key words, I'd say communication is a key word. Stability and ownership is another term that I think is very, very important. And looking back 18 years, we did the right thing, and I'm so glad we did it. And we would do everything the same way again if we had to.
Not every day you hear such convincing and compelling success stories. I want to thank our guests for joining us. Wish you luck if you decide to proceed down the ESOP road, and you know who to call to get some advice. I want to thank you for joining us. Patti Owens, great day.